It's the pre-show, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains, episode number 523. 2 days late, but better late than never.
Who says?
Well, that's true. We'll find out. But I was on my deathbed Monday, and we were not able to launch a show. And thank you to all for being patient. And I would say I'm in about 55% capacity here. So. But I worked a normal day today, did a school program, opened up the circus, the Ringling Brothers circuses in town, and you know how those live shots go. And then I'm here, so we're moving in the right direction. But it's a Wednesday night special, and I got an idea. This is going to be a good show. I just feel it. And for some reason, Kevin, people are expecting you to be especially cranky.
Why?
I've seen it all day on Twitter. They can't wait to hear you go into a rant, and I'm not even sure.
Have I missed something? What am I supposed to go off on?
Well, I don't know. You said that meme that guy generated on Twitter?
The what?
The meme with you.
Oh, yes, yes. Aubrey just loves to egg me on, too. She doesn't care. When you say, I don't care, as long as I just go off on something. Is that right?
Because I can feel you, Kevin. I feel you right there. Yeah.
I have a Twitter question. Let's go off on social media. I have a Twitter question, James.
Well, this is where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and say outrageous things. Why not?
But this, I don't think you understood my email question, because you have crud.
I have the
for
crud.
You to say.
Exactly.
You have the crud.
I do have the crud.
You have 239,000 followers, but only 54.6 thousand you are following, and it used to be a lot closer to that.
You follow 54,000 people?
No, but he was
Yes.
up. He was up only running behind 20 or 30,000 the follower count, because you used to follow everybody if they looked real, right?
Right.
But how
why-
do you flip through your feed?
Why?
You have to use lists. The people I follow. I
Wait,
glance at
before we get on the lesson,
Oh, okay.
What happened to the numbers?
I just couldn't keep up with it. You know, once a day I'd try and go in there and look at the people that follow me and follow them, and I couldn't keep up with it. So
you
the way
dropped off a bunch?
No, I haven't dropped anybody.
But that's what I'm saying. It used to be a couple of months ago, you were only, as you said in your email, 20 to 30,000 behind your followers count. But now you are 180-some thousand behind.
Well, no, that number I gave you was like 5 years ago.
No, but when you looked at your numbers, I'm looking at your page right now. Let me do a screen share because. Okay, there we go. Share. Okay, so there's your page, right?
Okay.
And the number, the following number, used to only be a few thousand behind the number of followers, and more than 150,000 of them vaporized a few months ago.
No. Like in 2010 and 2011, those numbers are pretty close.
Right.
But around that 5-year tornado deal 5 years ago, I couldn't keep up with it, and that's when I just kind of gave up on following everybody that follows me. So I just started following people that send me pictures or have a comment or engage with me.
So
the numbers have been slowly getting farther apart for 5 years.
So you're saying that your following number has never been higher than this number?
To my knowledge, no. And again, I don't pay attention to it, but
well,
Sounds like a politician,
feel like
to my
I've looked at
knowledge.
it, but I was talking about it with somebody, and we looked at it, and we were like, well, wait, something has happened here. Like did they go through and get rid of a lot of fake accounts and stuff like that? That's what it felt like.
Well, maybe they did. I don't know.
I
and if they
think
did,
your following number was much higher.
okay.
But now you can do your lesson.
Twitter. Oh, brother. Oh, boy.
You're not up. I'm sorry. Well, I interrupted you. You were going off on something about what using lists and.
Well, I wondered how.
I'm looking at Brian's picture. That's disturbing.
I thought it was Marshall Shepard for a minute.
It's me and Marshall. That's right, giving our AMS talk there. No, but back to Aubrey's question, and we got to get started. The way I do it, I follow 50-something thousand people, and at a glance, I can see what the mood is of those people. But to do the real serious work, I have lists. I have a weather list, a news list. You know, I've got a bunch of lists, and I use those extensively. So the key thing to be seen by me is to be on my weather list or my news list, especially, because I really pay attention to those. And that's the way I do it. And I think following people back, it's a really good thing to do. I should be honored that they followed me. They could follow a million weather goobers around the country, but they chose to follow me. And I just think it's nice to follow them back. And I tried to do that, and again, it was like an avalanche, just like Lucille Ball in the little line of candy. I couldn't keep up with it. So now, when people send me a picture or a report or something, I'll just follow. If I see I'm not following them, I'll hit the follow button. So, and I try and do that to acknowledge what they sent me and thank you. And again, for the people I follow, I'm not going to look at that all the time, but I do from occasionally just to get a feel for the mood. But you've got to use lists, and a good client to support lists. And obviously, the two big ones are TweetDeck and TweetBot. And I use TweetBot. It syncs wonderfully across all these phones and doodads and computers, and it keeps everything in sync, and it seems to handle a high volume very effectively. Their apps on the phones and tablets are really, really good, and it focuses on using lists. All right. I've invited Jeff, and I don't see him. I see John. John, if you can unmute yourself. We had to hit your mute button. There you go.
Hi.
Hey, John.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Good. Look good. Sound good.
Okay. I have a terrible cold, so I apologize if I sound bad.
The common thread of this show.
Yeah.
This is a sick bay right here. This whole thing. We are in sick
Get right
bay.
in.
Show title, Sick Bay.
Exactly. That is the show title. Man, we are just in bad shape. Let me invite Jeff one more time. But his name came up.
He checked in at 8:15 and said he was ready.
He has been invited twice. And we are welcome to our television viewers. We're doing a Wednesday night special. If you're watching the channel known as James Spann 24/7, we typically do the show on Monday, but I had the bubonic plague Monday night and was not able to perform my duties as host. So after a miraculous 2-day healing, I'm back. So we're doing a Wednesday night WeatherBrains special. I got a lot of people watching online, which looks good. And all we're waiting on is Jeff. And Jeff has the best stories to share.
Now, he's really got a good one this year.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure he does. I mean, goodness, he's like, he needs to write a book or something about his experiences. Here we go. He's there. Hey, Jeff.
Right. Hello.
Man, you look good. You sound good.
Thank you.
There he is.
There you go. Great. Let me get the recorders going here. We'll get this thing started. All right. And I will warn you guys, I am on so much medication. It's like I am in a fog. He's like, hey, man, let's talk a little weather. Yeah, hey. I don't know what's worse, the weakness from this horrible infection or the medication I'm on trying to come out of it. But whatever. All right, here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WeatherBrains, episode number 523. This is for Wednesday, the 27th of January, a Wednesday night special. This is the weekly show all about weather. We thank you for taking the time to listen to us this week. This is a very interesting time for weather. We're coming off a huge East Coast snow event, and I know we have stories from Dr. John and Aubrey. In fact, they're still digging out. And we have potential for another whopper of a snowstorm and maybe a severe weather problem next week. It's just going to be, I sense this might be one of our best shows ever. I don't know why. But I'm James, and again, let me apologize. It is my fault. I raised my hand. I'm the guy that made us miss Monday. I was here at work. I made it through the early evening news block, and well, I'll take it back. About 5:30 Central, I knew I couldn't go any more. The fever spiked. I was getting dizzy, and this is a sinus infection, which I get about once a year, but this was extremely severe, and I just couldn't do it. Sometimes you have to take yourself out of the game. I mean, sometimes you play hurt, sometimes you take yourself out of the game, and I just had to do that, so I'm so sorry. And I got to thank my man Brian. On no notice, he had to pick up 2 speeches the next morning, performed it flawlessly.
Enjoyed my lunch at the Vestavia Hills Country Club also.
Yes, at the club.
No, not the club. No, the Vestavia Hills Country Club.
Country Club. But
Yes.
Brian picked up an elementary school talk and then a talk to a group of business people, and it is so comforting to me to know that I've got everybody else that can pick up this stuff, because my days can be pretty brutal, and that was great. So, Brian, thank you. I owe you one.
You're welcome. I also have 2 tickets for you for the speeding I did to get from first talk to second talk. I will pass those on to you shortly.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I jam these things in very tightly, as you've learned.
You jam these 2 in with a crowbar.
Yeah. It's like I've got
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought they were on different days. It said you'll be in Coleman at 9:30, and then you'll be speaking at Vestavia Hills at 11:30, and I thought, that's not humanly possible.
Oh, it is the way I do it.
Yeah.
I got 2 of these things tomorrow. It's the exact same situation. I got one at 9, one at 11.
But they're 60 miles apart.
They are.
Helicopter.
Yeah.
I would have used it if I could.
But, everybody loved you. They said it was fantastic. So thank you. And
You're welcome.
Aubrey, I feel your pain.
James,
you're
I'm
suffering.
I'm going to yell at you. Well, I guess, okay, since you have an infection, you're not infecting anyone. It's not, like the viral stuff.
It's not viral.
I'll let it slide. I'm not sure mine's an infection, so I'll have to wait. But that's my fear, is spreading it around to other people at work. And I know one other guy I work with closely has to go to a hospital, and see someone this weekend. So I don't want to spread something to him and him carry it to the hospital. And that's kind of my fear, So I don't want to make anyone else suffer.
Yeah, it's so hard. Like I want to go to work. Even if I'm sick, I'll place injured. I'll go into work sick. But that's the problem. If you're contagious, you run the risk of spreading this around the TV station or the, whatever, wherever you work. And I'm always torn by that. But yeah, it's just being sick is miserable. So, Rick Smith, you look healthy as a mule, man.
Wow. Well, thank you. There's a special filter on the camera. I'll send you the link. No, I've had a little bit of crud over the last few weeks, but it's getting better. It seems like it kind of lingered, but not nearly as bad as what you guys have had. But yeah, things are going pretty well. We're warming up and getting a little bit of break in winter here for a few days.
Yeah, and I want to allot some time to talk about obviously the 2 storms, the one we just experienced and the one that is forecast to develop early next week, and it will affect all of us in different ways. So, Rick, I have many questions, but we'll hold those. Dr. John Scala is buried with snow.
And we are coming out of it. That was a remarkable event. If you take a look at my Facebook page, I have a before and after scene. Absolutely amazing. When I finally shoveled my sidewalk, it was like looking down a tunnel.
Mm-hmm. It sure was. That was impressive.
Amazing.
What'd you
I want
end
to
up
start
with, John?
Say what, Aubrey?
What'd you end up with? 25?
Paltry 24 inches.
Okay,
And,
about the same.
so my biggest question is, how were all of these spotters measuring snow with 30 to 40 mile an hour winds?
To a tenth of an inch.
To a tenth, precisely. The drifts across my property, in fact, I had a drift up to the door handles on my car, and the variation across my property where I was making measurements varied by more than 2 feet. So how are they coming up with these numbers?
Well, let me just stop here and ask you, John. You've got the highest latitude here. How do you measure snow properly in a blizzard with 40 mile an hour winds?
You cannot. You cannot.
Right,
I know you can take it.
what I thought, but I couldn't. But there's got to be some method to estimate
You
it.
can block the wind, right? So maybe use a wind baffle, but that's designed for rain gauges, not for measuring snowfall. So I try to find a place on my property where it is least impacted by wind, and then I take a variety of measurements and then come up with a mean. That's pretty rudimentary. So how are these guys taking measurements on a snowboard out in the middle of an airport property, for example, and the wind's blowing constantly?
My snowboard
Reagan National, they didn't do a very good job because they lost
isn't
the
that up
snowboard.
for debate?
My snowboard was honestly useless after about Friday night. By Saturday morning, my husband was like, I can't even. There's too much drifting.
Yeah.
Well, what was your total, or what do you think it was, Aubrey?
At the station, it was 25 inches. At my house, it was 22. And I live about 4 miles from the station. We did have the snowboard that I made from the station, which, by the way, was run over by a plow last year, so I had to make a new snowboard. So it was a custom Fort Wagler design, and we had it kind of off to the side behind our live truck, and it was, I don't know, there was another building several feet away, I don't know, 30 feet away or something like that, and so it wasn't out in the open. If I left it out in the open at the station, it would have been plowed over. So, but it looked like it did not get the drifting as bad over there. So that was kind of a good.
Right. And again, I'm going to let Bill get to our guest, but I do want to allot some time to talk about the storm as a whole, the forecast process, what worked, what didn't work, things like that. But let's see. Bill Murray, introduce our guests, because you, sir, have some important people to bring on.
Well, James, this is called being in the wrong place at the wrong time for our two guests tonight, because as you guys knew, we were supposed to have the folks from the UK Met, but something fell through on Monday night, and then you got sick, and so I had already reached out to John, who had emailed us in the day. He's a friend of the show, of course, and said, hey, John, I saw you were at ChaserCon, if we have to... if we have to zig tonight, could you appear on the show? Well, he was still en route back from ChaserCon, so anyway, it worked out that moving to Wednesday worked out well. But of course, Jeff Piotrowski wished me a happy birthday on Monday, and when he did, I seized the opportunity and recruited him onto the show. So it was either recruited or Shanghai. But we've got John Huntington from New York tonight. John's a photographer and a friend of the show. John, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Happy to be here.
Well, we want to talk about, we're going to kind of recap ChaserCon since you were there and Jeff was there and Rick was there, so that'll be a lot of fun tonight. And then you were right in the middle of the snow like Aubrey and John, so we want to hear about, what you've seen since you've been back in New York. And it's just good having you on the show.
Oh, thanks very much. I actually missed the entire storm because I was in Oklahoma the whole time. But, I missed the most interesting weather we've had in about a year in New York, and I missed the whole thing. But coming back from the airport, LaGuardia was totally jammed for like 2 or 3 hours to get through the the pickup and drop-off lanes. So I ended up walking out of the airport with my bags across the highway to get back to my car. So that was my excitement through the slush Monday night. So.
Yeah, some of the most impressive things have been these time lapse videos that people have shot. Did you shoot one from your balcony?
Well, I have just a security camera running on my balcony, and I usually do shoot a time lapse, but because I was gone for this whole storm, but I am hoping once it's all done to go back and edit that together, because I have all the the clips from the last week, so it should be interesting. I might just wait at this point till it all melts out, put it all together that way.
Well, I thought that the one that John Olshew, our associate down here in Alabama, sent around was one of the most interesting ones, because someone had a skeleton sitting on their deck or on their patio, and if you ran it backwards, it looked like maybe it was melting from the Donner Party or something. I'm not sure what that was all about, but anyway, it was a lot of fun. So we're glad you're here tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, Jeff Piotrowski's no stranger to the show. Jeff, of course, works for Barron Services and is a very accomplished storm chaser, one of the best in the business. And we're just lucky to have him tonight. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for being here. It's been a great last 2 weeks, a lot of snow, lots of weather, and looks like another big event coming up this week.
Week. Jeff, we, of course, always, are watching, virtually when there are events in the plains and things in Texas. And, of course, on December 26th, we were all shocked to see what we saw there. Not only with the development of the tornadoes, we had jinxed this tornado death toll the week before on WeatherBrains with Greg Carbon, because we were all sort of sitting around fat and happy, saying that we had the lowest death total in forever. And then we have a terrible outbreak. So, but then, to add, insult to injury, that night, we see your Twitter feed and see that you got actually, ran into a criminal situation. So why don't you kind of recount that day and talk to us about what happened that night?
Well, there's certain parts of what happened that night I can't go into right now because the case is at the district attorney, and in the coming weeks it'll be filed and go into the grand jury for indictment. So what I can tell you that day was the risk set up. Everybody was really busy at Christmas time, and I had talked to Catherine, and of course Norman Weather Office was putting out their specials about the Saturday being a risk day, and Storm Prediction Center did a great job on their 5% risk area for Oklahoma and North Texas. And just like any other day, I got up, I remember Christmas night, I told Kathy, I said, Kathy, we're going to have tornadoes tomorrow in Oklahoma and also just south of us. And so when I got up the next morning about 8 o'clock, looked at the risk, looked at the data, looked at the HRR model, 4 kilometer, and the HRR model had helicity tracks coming out of southern Oklahoma, Ardmore, tracking up near Norman and Pauls Valley. Davis here, just south of Norman. So I thought it was going to be close, not too far away. And things turned out that I ended up taking off about 9 o'clock and drove south down toward between McAllister and Ardmore. And shortly about 11:30 noon, we had severe thunderstorms developing near Ardmore, tracking up toward Oklahoma City. Some of them were starting to rotate, and a couple tornado warnings were issued by the Norman office. And about that time, I was talking to other people in the weather service and talking about this wave coming out of Central Texas heading north, and by late afternoon that was going to be up near North Texas. And so I decided to go to Paris, going down to Paris and drop south of Paris, and waited for the first supercells to come up south from Paris. And that's what I did. Started having severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warnings late in the afternoon, and stayed in that area just south of Paris later that afternoon, and then watched the big tornadoes start forming down by Waco and Austin and track up toward Dallas as you start getting closer to 5 o'clock with numerous tornadoes on the ground and lots of reports of damage as it came up I-35.
So Jeff, when you saw these storms going toward Dallas, we began to think about our worst case scenario in many of our minds. As a major tornado outbreak across the metroplex. What were you thinking as you saw that happen?
Well, I mean, having a lot of extra tools available to us, the bearing data, shear markers, the shear skids, and the shear rate, and then looking at the terminal Doppler radar out of DFW as well as the Dallas Love Field, and watching the Fort Worth Doppler, and watching the ham reports and the spotter reports coming in, this large destructive tornado tracking toward between Dallas and Fort Worth, and then watching it live. In the car, I could actually see the tornado with a spotter in. So there's numerous live feeds coming in from south of Dallas. And then watched the tornado track after dark toward downtown Dallas. And then at that time, I was literally just northeast of Dallas on the northeast side, debating whether to go on into the city and watch that tornado come out of downtown Dallas, or watch the new circulation that was developing on the eastern flank. And I opted for number 2, and that's I got off at Garland and waited for the second circulation to develop, and it developed quite fast.
So talk about the tornadoes themselves as they developed on the east side of Dallas and the damage that you saw afterwards, Joe.
Well, watching the circulation ramp up rapidly on the terminal Doppler radar, you could tell the couplet was getting pretty insane numbers, and so I just tracked from the city of Garland back to Interstate 30. And as I'm driving south to Interstate 30, I don't see any power flashes yet, but I know there's a developing tornado because the couplet's very strong with the hooks forming. And the first thing I see is basically a roof falling on the sky. Fell just in front of me and off to the right into a shopping center. And when that happened, I was like, okay, it's on the ground. And then a few seconds later, started having power flashes south of Interstate 30. Immediately came up to the intersection there at I-30 and went east. And as it went east, it took me a couple of minutes to actually see the tornado. It already crossed the Interstate 30. By the time I got east there a couple of miles, came across the path of very large swath of damage. Apartment complex had been hit, a shopping center had been hit, and I couldn't see the cars that had been hit, but I knew cars had been hit on the going eastbound on 30, but I was going back to, westbound, but I was going eastbound. So I knew there had been damage and probably cars had been hit there. I did talk to 911 before I got Interstate 30, telling them there's tornadoes on the ground, tracking across Interstate 30, did make that call. They were pretty overwhelmed because of the calls coming in, and then basically just tracked this large, huge tornado northeast of Garland up toward the lake, and then continued to track it northeast, and it was moving quite fast. The amazing thing was about that event is the tornado, you could see it from like 20, 25 miles away. You could see this large tornado. It was high base, so the bases were fairly high, and it was almost like a Texas Panhandle type chase. You could see the tornado from 20, 25 miles away, and it's very visible at night. It wasn't rain rep. I thought the ceilings were going to be real low and very hard to see, but you could see this very easily from 20, 25 miles away.
Well, I tell you, the photos that people shot from from their vantage points on the lake were just amazing. That just had to be an unbelievable sight.
Yeah, watching at one time north up there, it had a large tornado on the lake, and then also had a small satellite tornado going up Highway 78 as it tracked on north up toward Farmersville. So I actually had two on the ground at the same time, one over the lake and one on the same road. I was on Highway 78, so I could actually watch a pair of twin tornadoes about 2 miles apart tracking due north at the same time. It was an incredible sight.
So there's a certain point, Jeff, where you break off the chase in any situation and you begin to help. So talk about that and tell us what you can about the incident that you ran into that night.
Yeah, as we got up north of Rockwell and Farmersville, I followed tornado north of Farmersville up to Blue Ridge and that area. And when I got to Blue Ridge area, I noticed a lot of debris on the road, people's personal belongings, and I knew at that time that the circulations and the tornadoes, it was getting late, probably in the 8:30, 9 o'clock time frame, so I knew it was time to break off the chase. It was too dangerous. So at that time, I knew that there was a number of homes hit from south of Blue Ridge, and especially west of Farmersville, all the way back down to Wilding, Rockwell, in that area. So I knew there was people that were going to need some kind of help. So I made my way back down Highway 78, back down to Farmersville, and just southwest of there, and I ended up going about a mile west. And the first intersection I come to, there was a deputy from Farmersville, policeman from Farmersville, and he had just pulled in, and there was a couple walking out of the field, and their house had just been hit with major damage. And as I pulled up to that scene, he looked at me and he said, "Are you a storm chaser?" And I told the deputy, "Yes, I am." He says, "There's another tornado coming." And I said, "Well, let me look at radar." So I pulled up the other phone and looked at radar, and there was an intense couplet south of us about 5 miles. And I said, "It's not going to hit us, but it's going to go just east of here." He goes, "What should we do?" And I said, "I would get out of here as quick as you can." You got a lot of debris on the road, all over the place. You got a half-mile wide path of debris. You don't want to be in that area with another tornado because that makes it, or even if it wasn't a tornado, just high winds, it creates a lot of other problems. You don't want to be in that kind of situation. So shortly after I left that scene, I continued south on 78, and I noticed a gentleman walking, running down the road, and looked like he was injured, had his hand on his head, and thinking, okay, tornado just happened. There's possibly somebody's hurt. So I turned the vehicle around and go back to assist. And as I turned around, this individual was running at me in the middle of the road. And as soon as he came in view of my truck, I knew something was not right with this individual. I had a very bad feeling. And your gut instinct, 35 years, it's always kept me safe. And I've been on many, many disasters across the United States and actually even third world countries. And I can tell you that I knew something was going to happen. I just didn't know what with this individual. So we had, communications is, are you okay? Are you okay? Noticed that the police officer's down the road about 2 miles and not moving. He was on a damage area. And within a couple of seconds, the guy said something to the effect of, I need an attorney. And the next thing I know, the guy had his hand and he was choking me. He was literally trying to rip my neck, windpipe out of my throat, and he was literally choking me to death. And at that point, I took all I could to break loose of the individual, and he was trying to pull me out the window. If I hadn't had my seatbelt on, the car door was locked, and my truck and drive, and trying to get away from this particular individual, I would not be here tonight.
Good gracious, that is just a frightening and shocking story, Jeff. We were all just appalled by what we saw. So, what did you do then, Jeff?
Well, what people don't know, and I can't talk about, I was not the only one attacked. There were a number of other people that were attacked that night, and after this, and after the DA gets the charges filed and it goes to grand jury, I will be a no-holds-bar tell all about what happened. It's unbelievable. People will not believe the whole story. I was injured. I've got 20% rotator cuff in the left shoulder, and I've got almost 40% in the right shoulder. I will have to get surgery sooner or later on the right one, probably sooner, maybe in the coming weeks or month on this one. Right shoulder, fighting the individual off. But I will tell you this, and I've been very outspoken about this already, and that is the Collin County Sheriff's Office, the Collin County deputies there that responded to the scene, as well as the second off-duty officer, as well as the residents at Farmersville, and the Collins County District Attorney's Office has been unbelievable. Rapid investigation I have never seen. Remember, guys, this is a tsunami disaster that has just occurred in their county with thousands of people, damage everywhere. These guys are overwhelmed. 911's backed up. These guys were rapidly responding. The deputies did to stop this violent act, and I can't tell you how commended. And I think when the whole story comes out, this was an unbelievable, heinous act. Not only to me, but other people, and the officers that responded, the deputy responded to this thing did an unbelievable, just unbelievable. I have very high regards for the Collin County Sheriff's Office and their rapid response to stop not only the attacker, me, but other people as well. It was unbelievable.
So Jeff, will this change your approach in future chases, or will this change your advice to chasers when you talk to them in the future?
It's not going to change my approach. My approach is going to be, as I have for 35 years, before, during, and after disaster. It's always about situational awareness. It's about helping people. Just a good example is the night of this attack. Farmersville, just 5 minutes before this attack, an officer says, "Are you a storm chaser?" I said, "Yes." And it's taking that knowledge, looking at the data, and giving that officer advice whether to evacuate that particular location where there's a lot of damage. It's things like that. A lot of times, just simply giving somebody a cell phone so they can call a loved one to come and get them. Or at times, you have to dig people out of the rubble. But I won't change that aspect. But if it's a dark country road, it's dark, I don't know the individual, it's probably going to be more of a call to 911 and let them deal with it versus put my life in danger. But I will never stop help people. I mean, if it's during the daytime and I can clearly see the threat more clearly or what needs to be done, then I'll always stop and help people. That'll never change.
Well, Rick, you were just a county warning area away there. Talk about the December 26th event from a meteorological standpoint, from the Weather Service standpoint.
Well, I was kind of in an unusual situation in that I was actually not working when we had severe weather. It's a pretty rare occurrence, and but it was Christmas and kind of some family commitments, and I wasn't at work. But of course, I was watching, and we saw the potential for tornadoes. Obviously, the SPC picked up on it, and the Fort Worth office did a great job of getting outlooks out and getting information out and getting their people as ready as they can be. I don't know a lot of the details, but nobody expected that the size and the scope and the intensity of the tornadoes that we saw, and probably, we've heard this time and time again. We heard it on the before Christmas tornadoes. Anytime we have tornadoes that people perceive to be, those aren't supposed to happen in December, so that, whether that affected preparedness or awareness or anything, I'm sure it did to some extent, but just some, and so glad Jeff's okay. I've talked to Jeff several times since then, but just some really interesting and really some tragic stories that came out of this, talking about awareness and preparedness. Some of all the vehicle deaths. There were a large number of deaths in vehicles for people apparently that just, as Jeff said, we're just driving west and we're unaware of what was going on, it sounds like.
So any other stories to share, Rick, that you were aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. Like I said, I was a little bit disconnected from it, but I know the Fort Worth office spent the last days of 2015 surveying damage, and there were some substantial tornadoes down there, and it could have been much worse, obviously, but that is one of the worst case scenarios that we worry about. Is that's such a densely populated area, and so many targets, and thankful that it wasn't any worse than it was. But I just have to commend the SPC and the Fort Worth office, Mark Fox and Tom Bradshaw and that gang down there for doing another bang up job.
Yeah, just amazing. So, Rick, you're there in Oklahoma, in Norman, of course, and a lot of us were shocked when we heard that Greg Carbon was moving jobs. Why don't you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I was shocked too. Thought Greg would be at the SPC for for a long time, if not forever. But yeah, he's going to go to the Weather Prediction Center, and I don't have his exact title, but he's going to be part of the forecast, chief of the forecast branch, I believe, at the Weather Prediction Center. And Greg's going to be top-notch success wherever he goes. We're going to miss him. I mean, he's going to leave a big hole to fill. He's been an excellent spokesperson for the Weather Service and for the Storm Prediction Center, and his statistics and his ability to crunch data and come out with some really cool graphics and innovative ways to display data. I know he'll still be able to do that in his new job, but man, we'll sure miss him around Norman.
Yeah, any leads on who might replace him?
No, haven't heard. On the Weather Service timescale, we're that's a ways off probably, but unfortunately, but hopefully it won't take too long. But they've got some good people waiting in the wings probably there at the Storm Prediction Center, and there's probably others out in the Weather Service, WCMs at forecast offices, and not the Norman office, but at other forecast offices that are maybe interested in that. I couldn't hold the camera. I wouldn't attempt to go there.
That's funny. So you were at ChaserCon. You were one of the speakers, Rick. Why don't you talk for a moment about what you talked about, which is always fascinating to our audience, of course, which is the Weather Service's, what it's like to be at the Weather Service in an outbreak, and talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, well, first of all, this is my first trip to ChaserCon. I'd watched some of the streaming video over the past couple of years, and Roger and Karen Hill put on an excellent show. I was really impressed. I think they had close to 400 people there or registered, and Jeff's shaking. I think that's about right. And it was great. I mean, I wasn't able to attend everything, but I was there for most of Saturday and most of Sunday, and just some really good speakers. And it's so cool to be in a room full of people that are so passionate about the weather. I mean, these are people that, aren't being paid by the government to go to a big conference. They're paying this out of their pockets, and they're going to see and hear Tim Marshall dressed up like Elvis, complete with a guitar. And,
oh my goodness,
that was great.
It's yeah, but it was cool. And Roger originally asked me to come, and I guess traditionally they do a storm spotter presentation on the last day, at the last thing. And I said, that's fine, I'm willing to do that, but I really wanted to talk more about some of the issues that we run into with chasers, some of the misunderstandings and misconceptions. So I ended up just talking, kind of giving a behind-the-scenes talk of what goes on in the National Weather Service, and to try to give chasers some perspective on why things are the way they are. And this talk was put together before the Amarillo affair, or whatever we call it, in November. Of course, we addressed that a little bit, but just, why does your report not appear on the SPC log? Why do we not issue an LSR? Why does it take us so long to do a damage survey? Why? Questions that chasers have, and just trying to answer those. And it was, I talked for almost 2 hours, and I think it was well received. It's hard to say, but there were some good questions and good comments on Twitter, and tried to just kind of be frank and as honest as I could be about some things, and let them, really the point of it all was just to hopefully keep the lines of communication open. It's really all about communication. Some of the misunderstandings that we have, if we just talked more, I mean, some of that would go away.
I'd like to just jump in and say Rick's talk was really excellent. It was almost 2 hours, but it was really informative. Actually, even changed some of the things I think about when I'm chasing too. Just because the idea that he was saying, report everything, even if you don't assume, because I've been on storms where you're basically hearing the thing narrated on the radio, some stream over, they're watching some stream somewhere, but really just to get in there and report anyway, and a lot of really good information about how the whole thing worked. And I thought Rick's talk was very, it was diplomatic on all sides, but also really told the truth, and I thought I really want to commend him for that. But really, every talk was great.
Thanks, John.
So, John, talk about that for a second. That's why we wanted you on here, to have your perspective as sort of a layperson, I guess, which I guess a lot of people there are. But since you're a friend of the show, to get your takeaways from the conference.
Yeah, it's been. I had to look it up, but I realized I've been going on and off since 2008, I guess, and that's about the time I started chasing the planes. I'd been on like hurricanes here in the 80s and stuff, but in my career and everything, I had the opportunity to get out around that time. And I went to the first ChaserCon, and I was like over my head just with the amount of meteorology that was there, and I ended up taking a Penn State online meteorology course after the first ChaserCon just so I can understand what was happening there. And then every year since then, I've either gone in person. It's usually been up in Denver, or watched. They put up a live stream. Corey Hartman from Severe Studios puts up a live stream sponsored, I believe by Allison House sponsored it. And so that was really great to be able to watch it. But this was the first year they've done it in Denver. I don't remember how many years, but this is the first time they've left Denver and gone to Moore, and it was really a good location. And they had I think their plan now is to alternate between the two. But the speakers, I didn't get out to look. They had a whole a lot of the people you've had as guests on your show. The El Reno survey team gave a great presentation. Howie Blunstein, Greg Forbes came in over Google Hangouts because he had a medical issue, couldn't make it. Let's see, Jason Persop, Greg Carbon, Tim Marshall. I'm sure Mrs. Van. Gary England gave a really great talk closing out the first night. And then Roger Hill, who usually doesn't speak, gave a really excellent talk about chasing monsoons down around Tucson, and that was really fascinating. And the whole area, in the Southwest. Blake Naftel, I think you've had him on, but they screened a big chunk of his documentary. Chris Novi, I don't know if you've had him on before, but he's always great. Yeah, you probably had every one of these people.
Everybody but Howie Bluestein, he's been avoiding us.
Oh, really? I think if you involve skiing somehow, he'll come there. He said usually and I do the same thing when it's in Denver. I go skiing with my cousin out in Snowmass and then go to the ChaserCon. And usually it's a quiet period of weather, but I was watching my security cameras from the convention in Oklahoma, watching the snow pile up out my window here, missing all the excitement. But it was worth it because it really was. And as you said, Tim Marshall is always, every year, gives just a hilarious talk. And one thing I think is great about Tim, too, like for people way less experienced like me, just sort of the humility he always talks about. Well, I went out, sat under the sky for 3 hours, nothing happened. I blew this chase target. All this kind of stuff makes you realize when you're kind of getting started out, like, yeah, well, not everybody. It's not like you see on TV where they just show all the hits and not all the hours sitting in the truck stop. And but yeah, definitely it's worth it. And of course, just hanging out at the bar with all these chasers and the adjacent conference this year was the homeschool moms convention, so it's very interesting.
The marriage made in heaven, right there.
You were loud.
That's funny. Yeah, I didn't know when the event had moved to Norman. I assumed from what you said, this is the first year. I went in 2003 and 2004 when it was in Denver, of course, and it was spectacular. And one of the things I walked away from there in 2004 was the Barron delivered ThreatNet, XM delivered satellite weather system. So that's still going strong, huh, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. We gave away one of those mobile ThreatNets, and they have a new service out now that's like the mobile ThreatNet, but it's actually web-based. So you can get that without having to XM, and that's very affordable. And it's actually gives you single stop radar. There you go. You get 2 months free access. It's good going, John. You got the free month access. So we give that to all the people attended. So you can log online, barronweather.com, and plug that. And it's kind of like the ThreatNet on steroids. Single site. It's velocities. It's radar. It's lightning. It's METARs. It's model data. It's everything you want. Whether you're in your home or your office, you're out in the car, you're on your iPhone or iPad. Or just the web. It's a great. We just launched that here recently. And it's very, very popular now.
So if I plug up my 2003 version, will it still work, Jeff Piotrowski?
2003, as long as your XM box is still working, buddy, we've got the data coming in. We've got you covered across all over the United States, 600 miles off the coast to coast. We've got you covered, Bill. And if that doesn't work, we've got you covered on the web as well, buddy. So we got you covered, Bill.
All right, bring me into the 21st century there. That's good.
Yes.
Rick, you had something you wanted to say, I think.
Well, I just wanted to be sure. I just tweeted the link, but this was streamed live, and I knew I was going to be talking about some semi-touchy things, so I was very conscious of the fact that God only knows who's watching this around the world. It wasn't just the people in the room, but that was so cool to have that stream live. We're getting a lot of comments from people that weren't even there. Corey Hartman and all the rest of the crew really did a great job. The good news is that all that's recorded, so you can watch the recordings of the streams. And if you look for Severe Studios on YouTube, if you just search for that, the first videos that pop up are a whole series. They have them divided up: Saturday morning, Saturday evening. I forget exactly how, but you can go and watch them that way. And so it's really cool. So it's kind of preserved, and if you missed it, it's almost like being there. They've got multiple cameras, and you can enjoy Elvis in his full glory.
That must have been great.
He always does a good job, and like John said, he's educational, he's humble, still kind of old school with a map and drawing a circle of the target area and all that. But I think it takes me a long time to put together presentations, but his presentation, almost every slide in it had a picture of one of the presidential candidates in some funny pose. They're either pointing, or they're drinking a beer, or they're doing something. I don't know how he did it, but it's great. He's a master at that. It was really, really good.
And I should just jump in too and just say, I think I can't remember the exact registration fee, was maybe like $150 or something for the convention. And we also, I don't think I mentioned before, but we got the tour the day before of the Weather Center, and got to see, I've been to the forecast office locally here before, but to see the SPC when you spend so much time reading what those guys are typing, and Rick's office as well, that was a really great reason to be in Oklahoma as well.
Yeah, and I remember when I went in 2003, I think that's right, that was the weekend of the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster. And we walked into the conference on that Saturday morning to the shocking news that the Space Shuttle Columbia had broken up over Texas. And it was just kind of a sobering thing. So I remember that very, very well. But anyway, it's good to see that ChaserCon is going strong and doing as well as it is. And we'll continue to talk about that. I know you wanted to jump in, John Scala, with a story about monsoons.
Yeah, I heard John mention the southwest monsoon. My family for many years did one of the strangest things, and that was we took some summer vacation in Tucson in August, or late July and August.
The rates are cheaper then.
Well, yeah, but why would you do that? Yeah, my parents didn't charge us to stay with them. But the southwest monsoons at that time of the year are just spectacular. So my family always complained, why are we going to the desert in July and August? Well, because you want to see the thunderstorms. Well, perhaps I'm the only one that shared that enthusiasm. But a few years ago, my parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. So we decided to have a big family get-together in Tucson. And it took place in one of the mountain resorts that's just west of the downtown. And so we had everybody together for this fantastic shindig celebrating my parents' anniversary. We had outdoor barbecue, and we had an outdoor bar, and it was fantastic until I noticed the storms forming on the high terrain and then moving towards us. And they produced an outflow that wiped out everything we had outside. So we moved inside, and then the ceiling tiles began to leak from the monsoon rain. So I had a chance to toast my parents that night and say, here's to the monsoons.
That's crazy. Yeah, we've had a couple of experiences in Tucson with weather, haven't we, John?
Oh, yeah, we have, Bill.
So talk for a minute, anybody, I guess you, John Huntington, what did our friend from Oklahoma City, Gary England, have to say during his talk?
Oh, it's interesting because I know, and I've heard him, I guess, on your show before and stuff, but it was more sort of telling stories about kind of wild stories of, I can't remember all the details, but, promising case of beer for anybody who found a tornado and things like that, and telling a little bit of his story. But I actually read, just too many names in my head all at once, but the book that Holly Bailey wrote about the about the Moore tornado, which I heard about on your show. And she had a lot of interviews with him about how seriously he took all this and how it was really a personal thing to him. And it was kind of interesting because this talk was very much, more just sort of funny stories and stuff. But he did close out, and I actually tweeted it, and I'll get the details wrong, but the idea of, he says, anybody in that room or anybody in this business has this weather gene, and once that's activated, there's no turning back. And I thought I agreed with that a lot. So his talk was great as well.
So how did you get into it, John? That'd be an interesting thing to learn, is how you got into weather and chasing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, where we got just got thunderstorms in the summertime and stuff, and I was always fascinated by those. And then I just always fascinated by that. And then in the '80s, I was living on Long Island, and I think it was Hurricane Gloria. I don't know how I did it without radar or anything, but I managed to. It was right down at the ocean when the storm came in, and after that, I was kind of hooked. And then I work in the entertainment technology, and then I started teaching, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. And now in the last few years I've had, since 2005, the last few years being like the last 10, I've had the ability to get out in the spring, so I've been getting out whenever I can into the plains to chase there as well. But I know Scott McPartland, who's one of the other chasers here in New York, has been doing it forever, and he was down on the Jersey Shore during this storm, and of course the highest snowfall here in the city was in Queens, where he lives, so he missed a lot of it by chasing down south where it looked like the models were going to be. So same thing. So even in New York, you can, every thunderstorm I'm on my roof with the camera, or I'm down at the beach or something. So yeah, I think I have that gene, definitely.
Well, if you're watching the show or you're listening and you haven't been over to see John's website, he's got it there in his at www.johnhuntington.photography, and it is spectacular. The website there is just super. But I guess you just raised an interesting question there. When I wrote on Wednesday, it looked like New York City was going to get very little snow, if any at all, and that changed rapidly. What's been the feeling of New Yorkers about the forecast for the storm?
It's been interesting. I think here, if you have more than like 8 or 10 inches, then the impact is, I don't want to say it's the same, but the actions you have to take are about the same, so it's not really that much different. And I think there was a pretty wide gradient, because JFK, which is to our southeast down by the ocean, had I can't remember the number, was 27 inches or something. And then even in northern Manhattan, they had less. I had less than that here, and they had even less in northern Manhattan. I remember at ChaserCon, I was looking at my phone, at my security camera out my window, and I saw 10 or 12 inches. And a friend of mine in Harlem in northern Manhattan had posted a picture on Facebook. There was like hardly anything. So, yeah. And the city did a really good job with it. There's a couple neighborhoods in Queens that didn't get plowed, that are kind of in the areas between Brooklyn and Queens, but everywhere else it's just sort of another normal snowstorm that we've had. And I got lucky when I got back from the airport. I found a space on my block and just ran my Subaru in backwards into the snowdrift and just let it sit there until the snow melts.
Well, that's funny. Well, it looks like the travel ban really helped out with the recovery efforts, getting the streets cleared, right?
Yeah, and again, I was in Oklahoma, but the one thing they did, the last storm, which actually aggravated a lot of people, including me, the one that shifted out to Long Island, we didn't get that much, but I was actually down in Coney Island shooting with the camera when they decided to shut down the trains, which they had never done for a snowstorm before. And I was talking.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, and they gave a little bit of notice, but I would have been stranded up there. And I talked to, there's Nathan's Hot Dogs down there. They don't close for anything. They're open 365 days a year until 2 a.m. So I talked to the kid behind the counter. I'm like, they're shutting the trains down. He's like, oh, he didn't even know. And he said, so what are you going to do? He said he'd just sleep behind the counter overnight, which I don't imagine is a great experience.
It's just like Penn State.
Yeah. But this year, apparently, they only shut down the parts of the lines that were outside, which is makes a little more. The thing was aggravating last time when they shut the whole system down. They said they did, but in reality, they kept trains running all night anyway because they want to keep the tracks clear. And so, people were stuck in stations and the trains were going by them. So I think they learned from that lesson to really, to let them run. Because if you're in Manhattan, all the tracks are underground. There's no reason to shut those off.
Right.
So John, talk for just a moment, and from a travel perspective, for people who like going to New York, how has Coney Island and the areas along the shore recovered after Hurricane Sandy?
It's pretty amazing, and actually, if you talk on my website, I've been down there. I actually have pictures from Sandy on my photo site. I was there. I was actually in Rockaway in Queens during the storm, and then I left before the big high tide, and I was back the day after and a couple of days after. It was pretty devastated, especially in the Rockaways in Queens, which is right. It's a barrier. They're both barrier. Were we're all sitting on an island, but those are barrier islands right on the ocean, and it was really just devastated down there. And there's still some places, if you know what was there, when you go down there now, you'll see, oh, here's a vacant lot, and so on. But Rockaway now is the real estate prices are probably higher than they've ever been, even though there's a lot of confusion about the flood insurance. And Coney Island has been, the last few years, has been undergoing a resurgence, which really hasn't been stopped at all by the storm. So pretty much you wouldn't, if you go down there today to Coney Island, you probably hardly notice a difference unless you really knew what you're looking for. And since then, they built new roller coasters and everything else, and they just built it so all the control systems are up above the water line and so on. And at Rockaway, that was voted by the, I think it was Folders or some travel magazine last summer as like the top beach in the world to go to or something, which is kind of crazy. So they actually had traffic jams down there for the first time ever. And these are places it's really fascinating that most people that come to New York, I definitely would recommend going. Rockaway's a little bit more of a trek, but get on the train and go check some of these places out because we're on an island and the ocean is right there, and it's for me, I can be down at the ocean in 20 minutes, depending on the conditions. So it's really worth seeing.
So how long does it take to jump on the subway in Manhattan and be at Coney Island, John?
Depends on where you are, but probably if you're in downtown, probably 30, 40 minutes, maybe a little longer. And then if you're further uptown, but there's a lot of trains that go out there.
Well, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing all that, John. I really appreciate it. So, more stories about the storm. John Scala, do you have anything else that stands out from this weekend's big event?
Yeah, Bill, the snow did a lot to knock down the manure smell locally. Usually around here you can tell the wind direction, but when the...
Very true, very true.
Isn't that true? So when the snow took care of what was the fresh manure cover, we didn't know what the wind direction was.
That's funny.
So everything was white instead of brown. But in going back to what John was saying about the gradient across Manhattan, that was one of the aspects of the forecast that was pretty solid, and that was the north and northwest periphery of this storm was going to have a very sharp gradient. The question was, where was that gradient going to be? And with time, it began to look like the storm was going to meander a little further north and a little further west. And I think the overall distribution of the heaviest snow was right on the money, and it amazingly so, 5 to 7 days in advance. Aubrey and I had exchanged emails on this for days, that this was going to be a monumental storm. And all the forecast models honed in on that. And if you think about where the infant disturbance was 5 to 7 days before this occurred, it was in the Pacific. So it's really a tremendous success from the numerical model side of things to capture the most important attribute to this storm and forecast it correctly.
I think it really was a coup for the National Weather Service for sure, and for the models, without question. Any comments on that, John, Aubrey?
Well, this is and it was a little scary forecasting because this is probably one of the biggest events that I've forecasted. So, and for us, really, in some ways, it was an easy forecast because we knew early on this would not be a precip type forecast. This would be all snow. So then it's, all right, duration and how much snow. And we knew it was going to be a dry snow. We knew temperatures were going to be, over the days we weren't making our forecast. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we weren't making our forecast high by a couple degrees. So we knew the trend was colder, therefore the higher snow ratios. So those were things that we were picking up on as the days went on, and it was... So, we went back to liquid amounts, forget these, oh my God, the Euro says this, and oh my God, the 0Z GFS says this. Those don't matter in most snowstorms because those are, based on certain ratios and it doesn't account for certain things. So we, went back over the liquid amounts and we're converting based off of that, based on how much liquid we would see with our temperatures. And it was actually even colder than we expected. And our snow ratios, our snow forecast was 20 to 30 inches. We started 12 to 24. And then we increased, after 24 hours, we increased it 20 to 30 for most of the area. And we kept a couple of lower totals on the south and western side of our DMA just because we thought some dry air would filter in and they wouldn't get that full wraparound band off of the Atlantic as the storm was continuing to intensify off the Delmarva. And our snowfall totals were pretty much right in line. You know, I know it's kind of crazy to have a 10-inch separation, but to be honest, that's exactly what we saw throughout the entire area. There was, you know, the heavy bands were from Winchester, Front Royal, north to Hagerstown, and Martinsburg.
Okay, guys, what we're going to do here is pause and do a couple of recorded segments, and after that, we're going to talk about the storm next week. You know, we're bragging about how good we are, so let's just talk about the next one that's coming in here. We've got picks of the week, and we've got the email, and so much more as WeatherBrains. Oh, and we have email from Tarmo, which is always a classic. Much more coming up as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
I'm willing to bet that you've heard the expression, do as I say and not as I do. Well, that's really good advice for a particular Russian physicist who did pioneering work in atmospheric electricity. G.W. Richman was born into a Baltic German family in July of 1711 in what had been Swedish Livonia, but later became part of Imperial Russia. In his early years, he studied in Reval and later at universities in Germany. He was elected a member of the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences in 1741 and conducted pioneering work on electricity and atmospheric electricity, as well as work on calorimetry. His work apparently paralleled the experimentation on lightning being done in the United States by Benjamin Franklin. Now, Franklin devised an experiment that required a sentry box large enough to contain a man and, quote, an electrical insulating stand, end quote. The sentry box was to be located on a high building with a long pointed rod rising through the door, extending 20 or 30 feet into the air, terminating in a point. This rod was to be affixed to the middle of an insulated stand, which was to be kept clean and dry so as to remain an insulator. When clouds, possibly electrified, would pass low, the rod, quote, might be electrified and afford sparks, the rod drawing fire, end quote, to the experimenter from a cloud. Aware of the danger this presented to the experimenter, Franklin advised to be well insulated by holding in his hand a wax handle affixed to a loop of a wire attached to the ground. He could bring the loop to the rod so that the sparks, if the rod is electrified, will strike from the rod to the wire and not affect him. It was this very experiment that Richman duplicated when he constructed a sentry box of his own in 1753 following Franklin's instructions. Now, some references suggest that he followed these instructions to the letter, but apparently that was not completely the case. While attending a meeting of the Academy of Sciences, Richman heard thunder and ran home. Working with his engraver in order to capture the event for posterity, Richman was apparently struck by what was described as ball lightning that appeared and collided with Richman's head, leaving him dead with a red spot on his forehead, his shoes blown open, and parts of his clothing singed. Further notes about the experiment described an explosion, quote, like that of a small cannon, end quote, that followed, knocking the engraver unconscious and causing damage to the room's door frame in addition to the door being torn off its hinges. Now, while Richman's work did not get him any fame, his death was apparently recorded as the first person in history to die while conducting electrical experiments. Just another electrifying fact from the fascinating world of weather. You knew that was coming. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
This Thursday, January 28th, marks the 30th anniversary of the loss of the Space Shuttle orbiter Challenger, 73 seconds into flight of mission 51L. While traveling at nearly Mach 2 at 46,000 feet, Challenger was enveloped in flame coming from the right solid rocket motor, liquid hydrogen from the ruptured external fuel tank, and instantly ignited hypergolic propellants coming from the ruptured reaction control system aboard the orbiter. Contrary to popular belief, though, the orbiter did not explode. It broke into large sections under the severe aerodynamic loads as it emerged from the fireball. The report of the Presidential Commission on the Space Shuttle Challenger accident concluded that a seal intended to prevent hot gases from leaking from joints in the right solid rocket motor had failed. Cameras on the launch pad captured the beginnings of that seal failure less than a second after liftoff. The O-ring failure occurred because of weather, or more specifically because both the primary and secondary rubber O-rings, as well as the heat-resistant putty, were operating in temperatures lower than they were designed for. Overnight lows dropped to 18 degrees at Cape Canaveral, and ice had accumulated throughout the structures on the launch pad. While air temperature had risen to 36 degrees by launch time, this was still 15 degrees lower than the coldest previous launch. Normal lows at the Cape on this day were 50 degrees. You may not know that temperature was not the only contributing weather condition. Beginning about 37 seconds after liftoff, Challenger encountered the first of several high-altitude wind shear conditions. The incident report calls the fluctuations large and notes that the SRB link may have been reinitiated or magnified by the amount of steering required to keep the vehicle on course, the most of any launch to date. In 2003, Dr. Mark Salita wrote in an American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics newsletter that, quote, in the absence of wind shear, the damaged but plugged O-rings probably would have survived the 120 seconds of booster operation without leaking, and the Challenger accident would not have happened, end quote. We'll never know if calmer conditions aloft would have saved the crew, but it does remind us why launch weather forecasts focus not just on conditions at the launch pad, but throughout the vehicle's path to orbit. It's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me in RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Time for a weather roundup. This show is being recorded on Wednesday, January 27th. We've talked about the big snowstorm from the recent days on the East Coast. Now let's look ahead to our new system that comes out next week. And let me just ask maybe Rick Smith, when was the last time we had a Day 7 severe weather risk area defined? Can you remember? Do you have any idea?
It's funny you should ask, because I was just looking at that. I think Patrick Marsh got that question this afternoon, and if I'm reading this right, it's been fairly rare. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It looks like this is the 11th time since 2008, and I believe so. It doesn't happen that often. It's very unusual to have a Day 7 risk.
Right. So where we are now, and again, this is Wednesday the 27th. The guys at SPC have defined a severe weather risk for Tuesday of the following week. That includes parts of the southern United States. And global models are in good agreement of a major storm, very dynamic, lifting out of the southwest. This looks like a whopper of the snow. So, Rick, while you got the mic, first glance, what do you say for your state? Looks like a wide range of weather there, huh?
It's going to be a wide range of weather. We're going to be warming up and feeling very spring-like over the weekend, and then kind of a 1-2 punch for our area potentially. We're not overly excited, but there'll be a chance of some thunder, it looks like, on Monday for parts of Oklahoma and Texas. Not really a big severe weather threat at this time, it doesn't look like. And then on the wraparound on the back side of that on Tuesday, parts of northern Oklahoma could see some snow. Again, we're not overly excited about just a huge storm here, but just like the last storm, it didn't do a lot here, as it was kind of in its infancy stage, but it gets cranking when it gets east of here.
Yeah, John had a model output. Jeff, what do you say? What say you on this thing?
Rick's on target. Not a big deal for Oklahoma. But north of here, northern and central Kansas, on up into Iowa, on up to west of Chicago, major snowstorm. It may reach blizzard criteria Tuesday morning through the day Tuesday across Iowa, eastern Nebraska. It's going to be pretty close to 850 low. The surface low deepened quite rapidly, and I was looking at the 850 up to 60 knots across Kansas and Nebraska on Tuesday, so with heavy snow, so they'll probably be very close to borderline blizzard. Severe weather, if there's severe weather, it's going to be toward Memphis, squall line, maybe some single-sized tornadoes in the QLC, Bow Echo type stuff. Memphis, south of St. Louis, over into northern Mississippi. Tuesday looks like it could have some severe weather, but it's not a big outbreak, but just some damaging winds, straight line, and a few tornadoes.
And Dr. John, what say you?
I've got to talk about what's happening right now first, and then
Oh,
then
go
we can
ahead.
talk about
That's a little easier. Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by water vapor imagery that we have access to. When I was teaching, I began every class with a water vapor loop, and then I asked every student in turn to describe what they were seeing. So let's take a look at what we have happening right now, and for those that are listening and not watching, if you can get a loop of the satellite imagery from this evening, it's truly fantastic. There's a ribbon of shear vorticity, which extends from Dallas to the northeast all the way up to Nantucket and then towards Nova Scotia. And within that, you see it looks like breaking waves. These are fantastic little vorticity maxima within this ribbon of shear vorticity. It's fantastic. And to the northwest, you see a short wave, well-defined with a vort center moving across the central Great Lakes. So initially in the models, it was this wave that was forecast potentially to merge with another developing storm off the southeast, and everyone was getting concerned, oh no, another snowstorm for New York or for the East Coast. Well, right now it looks like these two will not merge, and they'll remain separate entities. But as we look ahead towards next week, and let's see if I can get back to the model output that I was showing. Yeah, here it is over here. So let's see if I can share that. You go to tropical tidbits. As both Jeff and Rick were saying, this is probably going to be a pretty significant snowstorm for portions of the Great Plains heading in towards the Midwest into Iowa. We're going to be on the warm side. So it makes me wonder if we're going to have any potential flooding issues with this, because this will open up the Gulf of Mexico initially and then open up the Western Atlantic. And this is the kind of scenario that brings heavy rain to Pennsylvania, and with, I'm sure, a significant snowpack still in place, this to me looms potentially as a flooding issue.
I agree, and one thing too that I noticed was the amount of instability down here in the southern states. We are expected to approach 70 by the day before, and the surface-based capes are in excess of 1,500 joules, and for this time of the year, that's pretty robust. So just something to watch for next week, and that'll be the buzz of the weather world. But I noticed that Aubrey had to slip out. And again, Aubrey, look, I have compassion on anybody who's dealing with illness right now, because what I've had is brutal. So she's fighting this, and she had to step out. We got a lot of emails. We're going to get to all of those next week. But I do want to read, not read, but just play the one from Tarmo, because we love a good bit of audio on this show here.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
And what podcast has an Estonian correspondent?
That's right.
This one right here, and to prove it, here we go.
Hello, WeatherBrains.
Hello.
Not from Lagoya, Estonia, but from Exeter, United Kingdom. Yes, Exeter, the mecca of British meteorology, the home of Met Office, which, by the way, I happened to visit earlier today. Well, that was quite an honor. Weather here currently clearing up. We're expecting a fine weather tomorrow. After the windy and rainy day, we had a gale force gusts over here, and I heard on the radio in some places here in Devon there were in fact some flooding. Well, that's it for now. Have a great evening over there in the States. I know I will. From Exeter, United Kingdom, this was Tarmo Danilso.
I just like listening to him talk, man. That's awesome. Wow. That's good stuff. All right, so let's kind of phase into Picks of the Week here. Got a lot of folks on the show, and this is where we go around the room and share something that is weather-related. This can be a website, hardware, software, weather instruments. My pick of the week, it is a post from Brad Panovich with the question we hear so often: are we leaning too much on numerical weather prediction and putting forecasts together? interesting points that Brad made. I think it was very well written, and we'll put links to this up on the weatherbrains.com website. So that is my pick. So let's go around the horn. Brian Peters, what is your pick of the week, man?
Well, because of the snowstorm that we just had for the East Coast, that actually started down here, I was searching around for snow pictures from the satellite and came across a very interesting site on NASA's website that has to do with the SWAMI NPP National Polar Orbiting Partnership. And so I'm going to have a link to that because they have got a lot of resources there.
Cool. All right. And again, the links are going to be up on the site. Dr. John, what you got?
Oh, I'm laughing because I think Vern Sumi would roll over in his grave if he heard his name called as Swami.
In my own defense, John, I actually tried to get a pronunciation.
That's great. That's great, Brian. Oh, well, my pick of the week is from the Sterling Weather Forecast Office. They have a great summary of Washington's historic winter storms dating back to 1772. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's another link there. So this is a 2-for-1 gang. You'll actually take a look at the record snows at Washington, Baltimore, and Dulles, their top 10. It's a fascinating set of data put together by the Weather Service Office. Excellent.
Fantastic. All right, sounds good. Let's go to Kevin Selly. Kevin, you've been quiet. We expected a rant tonight.
You never introduced me, so I just kind of sat here and listened.
Well, maybe that's why. Let's just give Kevin the rest of the show. No, I'm doped. I'm doped up, man. There's no telling what I've not done here.
There seemed to be. You suggested there was some movement that I was going to rant on something today, which I'm not. I'm just getting ready for some nice warm.
Well, I want you to go off on this knucklehead guy that said local TV weather people have a mandate that they have to go on and kick up the hype, the hyperbole about these big weather events from their news directors and these corporate schmucks.
Yeah.
Who is this guy?
Chad Myers at CNN.
So where's the examples?
Well, yeah, that was kind of my point too. My weekend guy actually interned with him, and he said he's a very nice guy. I don't know him, I've never met him, but we've talked about. Chad tends to maybe get a little wound up, or maybe overstate things sometimes, in my opinion. My weekend guy suggested that was something that was sort of expected of him, and not necessarily his true personality. Who knows? But then to see that go by, I mean, I don't know. This crazy stuff's just all out of the barn to me. I suppose if some enterprising reporter, not me, wanted to figure it out, you can find out the markets that he's worked in. Because what he said it was happened to him, and he's worked in a handful of markets. I think Tulsa was one of them, and I can't remember the others. But I suppose if you wanted to go find out who those news directors were and find out if that was in fact ever said. You could, but who knows? I don't know. I didn't get too wound up about it. Just I think I'm mellowing.
What's the matter? What's the matter with you? And what about this book? Have you guys seen this one that's floating around? What is this? Bedtime stories about math or something?
I will. Yeah, Harold Brooks underwear and a flap, didn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen this one, but since you're doing picks of the week, I was down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and my pick of the week is tornadopod.com. I had the great pleasure to visit with a guy named Wes Kuba, I think is how he pronounces it. I'm actually going to invite him on the show, but he has invented a new tornado shelter. It's called the Tornado Pod, and it was actually inspired, James, by him watching the event of April 2011 there. He saw the devastation there, he saw the loss of life there, and he felt like there was maybe a better and more affordable way to create tornado shelters for people. And his design, actually, the initial part of his design, he said, came to him in a dream. He had thought about it just, days and days and days after that event. And one night in a dream, it came to him, and he said it started sort of like an egg-shaped thing. And he sat up in bed, swung his legs over the side, and pulled out a pad and started making some sketches, and now it's turned into this tornado pod, which we're going to have 2 stories on it in the early part of March as part of our Severe Weather Week coverage. But we shot part 1 yesterday, and that was just sort of seeing his design and where he's working and sort of the history of it. And then a week from Friday, we're going to go back down to Plano because he's going to get his wind testing done. We're going to shoot some 2x4s at his product and see how it does. And when he gets his wind rating approval, he's going to go to market with it. And I think it's a fascinating story. But I was really pleased to hear that it had come from your event there back in 2011. Sounds
cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm trying to get you stirred up, and you're not going to get stirred up.
I'm pretty mellow tonight. I don't. What's the book? What is it?
The Accelerant.
What's the book?
Well, it's like bedtime stories about math or something, and it's got this page that says whether or not. The great thing, boys and girls, about being a meteorologist or weather forecaster is that no one ever notices whether you're doing your job right. The map goes up. The weather guy, gal, tells us what the temperature is going to be tomorrow, whether it's going to rain or the sun is going to shine. And that's it. We never see what they said yesterday and whether that's actually happened. Any job where no one checks how well you're doing must be the best job in the world. But if someone starts tracking the numbers, these people are going to be in trouble. And then it's got some kid wearing a little baseball hat, and his phone is, we got a TV guy saying sunny all day, and it's pouring rain on him. So,
I think, and we talked about this, was it last week or the week before? I honestly think I just am finding it really difficult to get wound up about this stuff because there's no filter anymore, and there's nobody. We can sit and complain about all the the amateur weather people on Facebook and so on and so forth, but there's no filter on this, and there's no quote unquote governing body, even if we created one. I mean, I know we tried the digital seal and all that kind of stuff, but it just doesn't matter. I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do, and they don't have to listen to us anymore. And I just.
But if you go on one of your great tirades, I would be afraid of you going off on me on this show. I wouldn't do it.
I think the only thing that'll probably get me wound up again is if we get Mike Smith back on.
Bill,
James,
book him
I honestly
right
never
now.
thought I'd see the day that the accelerant would be subdued.
Yeah. I've been extinguished, I think.
He's wearing a flame retardant jacket. That's the problem.
You know what? We had this discussion the other day. You know who should be the next accelerant is how do you pronounce his last name? Dennis Mercero.
Yeah, he's coming up on our leap year show on the 29th.
He wrote a great post.
Yeah, that was funny.
I think he might be. If we can do it in Star Wars terms, he might be my apprentice. I think we should bring him up. I can train him in the ways of the dark side of the accelerant.
Wow. I think Kevin's on NyQuil.
When you're the accelerant, you burn out quickly. We have to have a good supply of them.
When you burn white hot, you flame out that.
That's right.
Well, I feel bad that I didn't even introduce you at the top of the show here. I feel horrible. I'm hurting.
What's the matter with you? Come on, I'm sitting here. You don't even introduce me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what's on your mind? Tell us. I mean.
Nothing. I said I'm waiting here. It's we're going to be in the mid-70s over the weekend, which is some 20 degrees above average. I'm anxious to see too. Rick already talked about that thing coming through next week. We might be at the at the initiation point, but this far out, and we sit and complain about people looking this far out when they do it on social media and whatnot. But the timing and the placement of day 7 is not going to verify, so we just kind of have to wait and let it get a little closer.
Which brings to mind. Is it within the realm of science to put up a risk on day 7 or day 8? I think it is.
Yeah.
But I just don't think you can be specific about timing or modes of severe weather or placement. But I don't have a problem with it throwing it up like that in the general area 7 days in advance. I think there's enough skill. But
yeah, I think, and people are going to take what they're going to take, but. From different sources, but I guess you hope that people listen to the tone, right? If we go on TV and say, okay, well, look, here's this thing, and I say, yeah, we might be looking at some thunderstorms for parts of the area next week, and that's really within all you can say at this point with any credibility. But if you do that with your hair on fire, then it becomes irresponsible. Or if you're doing it with crazy graphics on Facebook. But again, that horse is out of the barn. I just don't know that we're gonna draw that back in.
I never thought I'd see you mellow like this.
I'm actually looking forward to. I'll let a little secret out of the bag. I've been trying since I got here to get us an app, and I think I'm finally going to get it done through the company. And it's going to have something that we haven't seen before. James, you and I have talked about this, and it's just a little piece. But I think once I'm able to talk a little bit more definitively about it, I kind of think it's just really the only little thing we have left. It's part of personality, but it also, to give you a little teaser, I think it's going to draw on more really short fuse stuff as opposed to this 6, 7, 8 day, which is fun for us, but I think the general public, I don't know. I always remember one of the first things that you told me, and for those who are maybe newer to the program, I was your first intern way back. It's been almost 25 years ago now, James.
That's creepy.
But I know. But one of the first things I remember you telling me is don't waffle people. And as we've gone further and further out, and all these models are available to the general public now, that's exactly what we're doing. Because even the blizzard last week, we got that with some credibility. 4 to 5 days out, but people were on it and going crazy, and that thing was trending. Trending south, trending more toward the coast, and those so many days out, we were just waffling people, and I find that unfortunate, but I always remember that was one of the first things that you taught me. I think it's the only thing I actually remember. But
well, there you go. So don't waffle people.
Right.
When does this app come out?
I don't know. It's been a long journey with the company. The bones are in place. We got to do a couple things. We're at a next star station, and I think we've got all the clearances. I don't think it's going to be much before mid to late March.
Yeah, they just bought Media General today, so it might never happen. They got to spend their money on buying those TV stations.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't say what year.
I saw a lot of buzz on that. And again, before we continue with Picks of the Week, we do want to mention, and Brian brought this up in the chat room here internally, about there was a Weather Channel meteorologist, a digital meteorologist that died tragically. And did anybody know him or at all?
Nope.
We crossed paths when I was there, but I frankly just don't remember him.
I think I may have met him at a conference and, talking back and forth on Twitter, but I didn't know him well, but he was only 39 years old. I mean, really, really a sad story.
Yeah, and then there's all this buzz about, the situation surrounding the death. I have no interest in that. I don't know and don't care. It's just tragic when you see a young person lose their life like that. So it was a very sad note, and we thinking about our friends at the Weather Channel. All right, let's see. Jeff, got a pick of the week for us?
Yes, I sure do. Hey, this week, Saturday, we had a 3-inch hailstone fall in Central Valley of up near Sacramento, and it tied the state record, which was last broken in 1960. So a 56-year record was tied this weekend with a 3-inch hailstone out of the Sacramento office. And go online at the Sacramento office, and you can see it, and it's quite amazing.
Cool. All right.
You know what? I have to say, I think I see signs of accelerant in Jeff. Jeff, are you interested in the position?
Which one? No, I've got enough. No.
By the way, Jeff, next time some guy comes at you, I got a little bit of South Alabama in me, and I got some friends. I get some of my buddies to drive out there and open up a can of you-know-what, and they won't ever do that to you again.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I've got a plan. It's I've got a plan. Like I said, I'll come full. We'll come back and talk on your show after everything's put to bed and the person's indicted, and we'll open up that discussion.
Yeah, I know you can't say a lot about that, but that is just horrifying. Just horrifying.
Yeah, it was. It was. I'm glad to be here, guys. We got a great year ahead of us. We got a lot of great technology, great weather, and gosh, it's El Nino, and we're going to come busting out of the gates here with a lot of severe weather and lots of winter weather. So there's going to be a lot to talk about, a lot to do.
And you're happy to be alive.
Yes, I am.
All right, so let me see. John, you got a pick for this week for us?
Yes, excuse me. I actually posted a webcam from Coney Island since we were talking about that. And it's an interesting one because you can see the ocean in it. You can see some sunsets down there. And of course, in the summertime, you can see the rides going and everything, so it's pretty cool.
Everybody should go to John's website, johnhuntington.photography. You got one of the new TLDs, right? Yeah, John, beautiful photos, John.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, that's great stuff. Rick, have you done a pick of the week?
No, I haven't. Mine kind of ties back into the winter storm. There were so many good blog posts. Dennis Mercereau and Capital Weather Gang had 15 probably I could have chosen from, but kind of chose one that they did a collection of 10 time-lapse videos from the storm, everything from people's backyards to looking at the street outside their house, and it was a really good one on there that was really kind of more slick and produced, that had some a family and out sledding and stuff. So that's my pick of the week, is just 10 of the Capital Weather Gains picks for the best time-lapse videos from their area.
Awesome. Bill Murray, what you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to pick that time lapse that John Olshew, our associate, sent around, and I thought that was a fun one. There were a million, like Rick said, so I'm going to choose that as my pick of the week. Next week we've got Jason Bowman from My Weather Concierge. We'll circle back on February 8th and fit in one of these guests that we've missed somewhere along the way. Andrew Oldacre will join us on the 15th. Andrew Murray from the University of South Alabama will join us on February 22nd talking about the CCAPS event that'll be in Mobile in March. And then we'll finish out the month on Leap Day with Dennis Mercereau, who should be a real fun guest on February 29th.
Okay, I think I get everybody covered here. Kevin, you need more airtime? I still feel guilty.
I'm good. I'm just mellow.
Okay. Well, listen, WeatherBrains traditionally is on Monday night at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central Time, when I'm not on my deathbed. We should be back to normal next week. Most people listen, but if you want to watch this live, you can do it at live.bigbrainsmedia.com. We have a YouTube version that's available, but we'd like to hear from you. Aubrey will be back, we hope, next week, back in good health, and we'll have an email segment. The email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. All of us have social media accounts, and all those accounts are listed up on the website as well, weatherbrains.com. And if you listen by iTunes, we also mention we like those iTunes comments. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless.
Thanks for joining us, Jeff. John, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Great show. Thank you, guys. Thank you all.
Appreciate you guys being here.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.